Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're about to start. So if you're here, please turn on your camera. Okay, so let's start. So let me share the screen. Okay. Good. All right, so so today I'm going to continue to talk about reliability and validity. So the recorded video I had posted last week was about that. If you remember the one with like the four questions quiz. So I'm going to talk about that. And we're going to review some of your answers. But before that, there's a quick announcement. So next week, we'll start talking about statistics and statistical analysis. And so there is a software that you would need to download. So the software is named Jamovi. It's an open source, so it's free to download, and it doesn't take a lot of space on your hard drive. The link is right here. You can just Google Jamovi, and I will post the link to Blackboard as well. So make sure you have that installed, downloaded and installed by next week. And it works on Windows and Mac and other systems as well. Also, make sure Microsoft Excel is installed. As you're all aware, you get the Microsoft Office package via your university email address. That will be your license. So make sure Excel is also up and running. So we'll do a little bit of things on Excel, and we'll use Jamovi for. First of all, I'll explain some aspects of it, and then you'd have a chance to exercise or make some exercises next week and the week that follows. Okay. And let me know if you have any issue with downloading or installing. So, yeah, so we're talking about reliability and validity, and we said that before. So basically, we're talking about generalizability. That is to say, is it's a 7% of the population. And as I mentioned in the recorded lecture, like what if we want to do if the study that we conducted, let's say the survey, could be applied to the theory. So this is more about like the structure of the survey itself or the questionnaire. And I gave the example of the scale if it would have both reliability and validity. So always remember, reliability refers to consistency and validity refers to accuracy. And a good way to remember it is when we say someone is a reliable friend, means who's a friend who would show up every time you need them, right? So that's about like the consistency of them being a true friend to you. Regardless if they were super helpful or not, that's a different matter, but at least they show up. That's reliability. Validity is like accuracy. So are we measuring what we're supposed to measure? So I gave the example of the weight scale, right? If you recall. And so example one, so I asked you if a scale gives a different weight for at different times. So sometimes you would weigh 100, sometimes you'd weigh 110, another time it would weigh 135. if it's an accurate scale, and all of you said no. Are the results consistent? All of you answered no. In number 2, however, if a scale always add 10 pounds to whatever is being weighted, so does the scale give you an accurate weight? So the answer is no, and all of you answered no. Are the results consistent? Okay, most of you get that part wrong. The results are, Kate, how did you answer this question? If a scale always adds 10 pounds to whatever is weighted, so the scale, is it accurate? No. But are the results consistent? Yes or no?
I said, wait, hold on. The scale gives you are the results consistent?
Mm-hmm. You gave the right answer, by the way, so that's why I'm asking you.
Okay, yeah, I think I said, are the results consistent?
The answer no, yes.
Oh, no, they're not.
Well, actually,
if
the results are consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And here's so most of you, I thought you got it right. Most of you got this part wrong. The scale always add 10 pounds. Okay, so are the results consistent? You know what I mean? The results are consistent. It's consistently wrong, but it's consistent, right? So it's consistent. What we mean by consistent, that there is a systematic pattern to it. It doesn't give you an arbitrary number, right? Sometimes it's 95, sometimes it's 99, sometimes it's 104. It just adds 5 pounds, or sorry, 10 pounds to whatever you weigh. In other words, if you own that scale, if you know that it just adds 10 extra pounds, could you still use it? Eric, you're nodding. Why are you nodding? How are you going to use it?
You just subtract 10 pounds from whatever measurement it gives you.
Right. So that's what we mean by the difference between accuracy and consistency. So consistency mean, yeah, there's like a systematic pattern. Accuracy is like, are you hitting the exact, the right point or not? Okay. So that's the difference. Okay. Scale gives you a true weight whenever you weigh something. So all of you, that was super easy. So it is accurate and consistent. Okay, all right. Example 4. And this is a tricky one. Actually, I think that's the one Kate answered correctly compared to others. Sorry. Suppose you're just lifting things up and rate them as heavy or light depending on how you feel. Are the results accurate? What do you think? Are the results accurate? Who would say they are accurate? Can we do like a show of hand, or like you could use like a Zoom? Okay. Okay. Lily, okay, and Emily, and Natalie, and Eric, and Emily. Natalie, can you rationalize your answer? Why do you think it is accurate?
I just remember I got this one wrong when I did it the first time, but I think it's accurate because it's like between yourself, so you know, like you can feel it yourself and figure out between the other things that you weigh.
Yeah, so it's exactly right. It's about your, what we would call your subjective experience. So yeah, if you, you're carrying something and you feel it's heavy. Yeah, it's truly heavy for you. That's just accurate. Your experience is accurate, right? And you feel it's light. It is light for you. The problem with that is not about accuracy, it's about consistency, because what would feel light to Natalie could feel heavy for me, and something in between and for Eric, and something totally different for Emily, etc., etc. Right? So that's what so that I think illustrates the difference between accuracy and consistency. So accuracy means, yeah, it is something true in its own right. Consistency is something we can standardize. Remember that? Is it something standardized across the board? And so a physical scale, as opposed to just based on subjective experiences, yeah, I would tell you if something weighs 200 pounds, 300 pounds. Those are objective measurements. Hence, they are consistent, right? And they are true because, yeah, each body would equal to whatever weight it chose, right? And so that's pretty much explained the thing. So reliable and not valid, that's like the 10 extra pound scale. So you add 10 extra pounds, but it's all consistent. So it's hitting one area. It's not hitting the exact thing we're trying to measure, but it's consistent in its results. And how is that related to communication research? So suppose, for instance, we're trying to measure, let's say, for example, body satisfaction. But we ask question related to, let's say, workout excitement. Those are two different things, right? If you're talking about workout excitement, you will get results that talk about workout excitement. But that's not exactly related to body satisfaction, right? It's not the same. They could be close, not the same. Doesn't mean that, so it doesn't mean that scale is not reliable. It is reliable, but it's measuring something different, okay? Another way, if it's valid, not reliable, that's basically qualitative research. So remember, we were saying qualitative research is about like subjective experiences of individuals. And so, yeah, whatever you say in an interview, you cannot say your feelings or your perspectives are not valid. They are valid. But that way of measuring it is cannot be consistent across the board, right? So that's valid and not reliable. Each person is talking from their own, or each subject is talking from their own point of view. Not reliable, not valid, that's just the arbitrary thing. So that broken scale. So if you're asking arbitrary questions, that's not reliable, not valid. Both reliable and valid. So yeah, you're getting consistent results, and you're talking about the things we're supposed to measure, right? And we're going to show more examples, which would make things clear. And so reliability basically is like we measure something as an entity. So the whole scale. So you have a scale for body satisfaction. You have a scale for self-esteem. You have a scale for ad enjoyment. Let's say, for example. So that's simply it's measured by the internal consistency across time and across items. So let's say I am measuring some sort of like a personality trait. Let's say self-discipline or self-organization. If I give you this personality quiz, you fill it today, and then I give it to you a week from now, the result should be about the same. Maybe not 100%, so maybe like a 1 point off here or half a point off there. It should be about the same, right? Because supposedly all of the items, i.e. questions, are consistent. I'm not asking about things that are totally different, okay? So that's consistency across time. And alternate form is like, even when I change, like I modify the questions, it should not render or yield totally different results. So for instance, if I ask, did you enjoy the game last night? Okay, so that's one question. Or if I ask, while watching the game, was it enjoyable? I'm basically asking the same thing, but I just changed a few words. And so the results I am getting from you should be the same, right? Same question, same results. So that's what we mean by reliability. Whenever you ask a sample, they would give you consistent results, right? There should not be significant changes unless there are like significant interventions. And then individual items. So in a scale, so you remember when we talked about proportionalization, we come up with different questions to measure the same thing, right? So you have like 4 items, 5 items, 6 items, 3 items, it depends. And each measurement should be consistent with the scale as a whole, right? So we remember one exercise we had, like I asked you about ad intrusiveness. So yeah, you ask, is the ad intrusive? Like, was that annoying? And was it disturbing? Okay. So if we dropped one, if we compared one to the other two, the results should be close to one another, right? So if you answer, yeah, on a scale of 1 to 5, it was annoying. Disturbing also should be around like 4 or 5, and yeah, and then something else, like we said, what, like disturbing, annoying, and bothersome, yeah, should be also around the same thing, right? So each item is related, in other words, to the others, like, so it creates a good consistent structure. Validity, we said there were 2, so we already covered one, by the way, which had to do with the sampling. We call that generalizability or external validity, remember? So external validity is like, can we generalize the study findings? So for example, people who play violent video games show more aggressive behavior. If that's true in the sample, is it true for the population? Or can we draw from that to the theory? So for instance, if we say people who play cooperative video games showed less violent traits. So cooperation leads to less violent traits. So, okay, that's something we could we apply to the theory. And that's more related to the sampling process, right? Internal validity, on the other hand, related to the construction of the survey items themselves, i.e. the questionnaire. It's like, how confident are we when we say, okay, these items are going to measure self-esteem? How confident are we that they are actually measuring self-esteem, right? And not something else. And so they are reliably giving us answers that relate to self-esteem, for instance. So this is more about the item construction, which we are going to talk about today. And so, yes, to summarize this part, we do standardized measurement to get reliability, as opposed to, for instance, open-ended questions or interview questions. So we want consistent ways. So, you know, those quantified items. So I measure, like, I don't ask each one of you, have you enjoyed how did you find the movie? And each one of you give me like a subjective answer. I ask you on a scale of 1 to 7, like, to what extent did you enjoy the movie or you find it interesting? So hence, it's a consistent way to compare your answers, right? That's reliability. Accuracy, external validity is when the sample could be representative of the population. And when you give accurate measurement, that's internal validity. Whatever is in the questionnaire should reflect whatever is in reality. And we're going to talk more about internal validity today. So you don't have to remember those labels, by the way, cognitive validity, concept validity, acoustic validity, but just like the whole notion. So if we want to look into internal validity, we want to see if the concept has like a good structure from within, right? In terms of like the quality of the items. And if it's also can be related to other concepts we're studying, like in social sciences or in communication studies in particular, right? So, and could it be coherently defined, and could we relate it to other things? And going to explain this in detail. So basically, the criteria by which we assess validity of a measured variable, or a scale as we call it. There are 6 criteria. So they are face validity, exhaustiveness, internal coherence, relatedness, uniqueness, and prediction. Relatedness and uniqueness, you would see they're sort of like the opposite, but the two must be present. Exhaustiveness we talked about before, and also predict. So we're going to talk more about them like one by one. Face validity is basically the easiest one. And so it's basically at face value, if the items talk about the same thing or resemble the same things you claim to measure. For instance, we have a scale that aims to measure. Scale is the operationalization, right, of the variable. A scale for film enjoyment, and the items you asked in the survey were, I enjoyed watching the movie. While watching the movie, I felt happy, and the movie was sensational. This has face validity. Okay, so you're talking about like happiness, enjoyment, sensation, and it's more about film enjoyment, then yeah. So this is just at face value, right? At least the words are the same. Exhaustiveness, on the other hand, is like, are you covering all of the dimension of the studied concept or variable or not? Okay. Are you covering only one aspect, or are you covering the whole aspects or dimension of that? Let me give you an example. So this is, there is a scale actually called Drama Enjoyment Scale by Riney and Bryant. And they say, okay, drama enjoyment consists of, so if you thought the show was exciting, suspenseful, good, well acted, plus if you overall enjoyed it, and if you enjoyed the subject it discusses, right? So they say, okay, so this is a multi-dimensional understanding of drama enjoyment, right? Let me ask someone who hasn't talked in a while. Cool. Miranda, are you still here? Okay, let's see who else is here. Zoe, are you here? Annie, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Can you tell us what's the last show, or one of any show you watched recently? Any show, any drama, any comedy?
I've been watching Schitt's Creek a lot recently.
Okay, that's a good choice. Okay. All right, so let me ask you, did you find it, do you think it was well acted?
Yeah, I think so.
Are you enjoying it?
Hmm.
Well, you said a lot. Do you think it was suspenseful?
No, not really.
Okay, so that's the one image. Is like, is it exciting?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see, but so you see, like, you cover different dimensions, so it's not about only about you enjoy it. So it could be lacking in one thing. So sometimes you would enjoy poorly acted shows, right? So it is well acted, it is, but all of these put together would create the drama enjoyment. Like you enjoyed all aspects of it, right? So that's what I mean, like, yeah, by exhaustiveness. Like they cover different aspects of the same thing. Okay, thank you, Annie. So that's one thing. Then we have internal coherence, which is related to exhaustiveness, that those sub dimensions are not contradictory against one another, but they are different aspects of the same thing. Let me give you an example. So suppose you add an item to that drama enjoyment scale and say, I thought the lead actor or actress was physically attractive. That item belonged to a drama enjoyment scale. Why or why not? Yes, Emily.
I'm not sure if it's yes or no. I'm kind of on maybe because that might like influence someone's decision to watch something, but I don't necessarily know if that'll influence their enjoyment of it. It might or it might not.
So what you're saying, okay, to watch something, but what about evaluating it after they watch it?
I think it might belong there depending on the person. I think it could influence someone's enjoyment of it.
Well, let me ask you a question. Actually, you sort of answered it. Could you find a movie very terrible, but you still think the lead actor was physically attractive?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we mean. Yeah, so that's what we mean. Yeah, so this is a lack of internal coherence, right? So that what you just said, it means it is a different concept that is related. Not exactly part of it. So yeah, obviously, right, you watching a show and full of beautiful actors and actresses, that would somewhat influence your watching experience, right? But it's a different thing, right? It could exist independent of, and then it could affect the dependent variable, which is the enjoyment of the drama or movie, etc. But it's not it, you know. So you see that it's not it. It could affect it, but it's not it. So that's the difference. In contrast, so suppose you developed a scale for game enjoyment. Let me change it a bit, so from drama to game enjoyment, and you had 3 items. During the game, I felt like having like fun, excitement, and satisfaction. Are those 3 aspects related? Fun, excitement, satisfaction. So yeah. So Eric is nodding. Yes. So yeah, there's some cohesion. You feel it was fun. You get excited. You're like satisfied, like that you played the game, right? So it's not something independent of it. They're all like related, and we can all of them, the 3 together. We just can call it game enjoyment. Okay. It gets more tricky though. So that those 2 things related to what we call the internal part. So the internal coherence and the exhaustiveness. But then there are the relationship of the variable to other variables. And that's relatedness. And that is to say, the scale we are measuring there should be related to other variables that are logically and theoretically relevant to it or close to it. And this might sound sort of like pedantic, but let me give an example to make it clear. Suppose we are measuring the trait of narcissism. People are familiar with narcissism, right? Okay. Which of the following concept would be mostly related to it? A, arrogance, B, openness to experience, and C, self-discipline. And you can answer in the chat if you like. So is it A, B, or C? Which one is more related to narcissism? Okay, so everyone is saying A. Okay. Emily, Miranda, Natalie, Annie, Eric, Lily, right? And yeah, and so if you have a scale that, we have a sample. So we measure arrogance and narcissism. The scores of arrogance and narcissism should be pretty close. Not necessarily 100% correlation, but because theoretically, logically, psychologically, those two things are related, so these should be related also when we measure them, right? Otherwise, yeah, if it's not related, then your scale could be off. You're not really measuring narcissism, you could be measuring something else, right? So that's how we know. Secondly, and this is tricky, it has to be related, but it also has to be unique. So the measured concept cannot be exactly the same as any other concept. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a different concept. It would be something else, right? It would belong to the same concept. And let me give you a different example. So suppose I came up with a scale that said, okay, this is for game enjoyment. And the items I have, they feel the game was like enjoyable, fun, satisfying. Another person he said, okay, I'm having a scale and I'm calling it game excitement. And I'm asking, I'll be asking, is it exciting, entertaining, and engaging? So look at the items though. So enjoyable, fun, satisfying, exciting, entertaining, engaging. Do you think they are unique from one another, or are they practically the same? So look at the items closely and tell me if you think they are uniquely different than one another, or they're basically measuring the same thing. What do you think?
I feel like they could be unique because the first set sort of talks about what you come away feeling, whereas the second set talks about how you feel like while you're playing the game.
Okay, so you're saying if one was about, okay, during the game, and the other was about like the effective reaction after the game.
Yes.
But what was that made clear in the question?
I guess not.
Okay, you know, it's what you mentioned is pretty clear. It's like if you're measuring a state during or after. But let me ask you simply: if I ask if something is enjoyable, exciting, and entertaining, and fun, am I asking about four different things or four aspects of basically one thing? What would you say?
They're basically the same.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. And I fully aware this part is very tricky, actually. This is actually one of the hardest part when you're doing skill development. Believe me, I went through the process. Like, yeah, and that's the dilemma when you're in social science. Remember we said like a few weeks ago, we don't measure physical entities. We come up with concepts, say there's something we call game enjoyment, and here's how we define it. But is it the same as game excitement, or is it the game as like game entertainment? How are you going to like, uniquely define each one to be distinguishable from one another? And yeah, and it's tricky, and it depends on how you frame it or such. It could be, and Lily has a great point. It could be, for instance, that you could develop a scale experience during the game versus experience of like emotional experience of how you felt post after the game or right after the game. And those could measure two different states, right? But you would really need to be careful how you phrase it. So it's all about the phrasing here, right? But yeah, if the two things cannot be easily distinguishable, yet it's basically the same. And so you could consider them different aspects of the same construct or variable. And finally, we have something we call testing validity. it's also called predictiveness or predictive validity. And the idea is, you're measuring something. Should it be able to predict some other attitudinal variables, other behavioral variables, some actions, some sort of like a behavior? Okay, so if you use that scale, logically speaking, could it predict the implications? Let me give you an example, right? So going back to this scale for game enjoyment. So Lily, by the way, do you play video games or not?
Yeah, I do.
What do you play?
Right now I'm playing Skyrim.
Okay, so supposedly, you know the production company of Skyrim?
Bethesda?
Okay, so suppose you work for them, and so you recruited us, we were your sample. So we played it, and then you gave us like an enjoyment scale. We felt it. And then you ask us, sorry, are you willing to play the game again? Okay. We answered, then you looked at the results. Should game enjoyment predict our willingness to play the game again?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, right. So that's basic predictability. Yeah, that if people enjoyed it, they should be more willing to play it again. So they say they're willing to play it. And I keep in mind, I didn't say purchase, because purchase also could involve other things. If you have money or if you have a console or something, that's. But I say like you're willing to pay it again. There should be very high correlation between people saying they enjoyed the game and people saying they're willing to play the game. If that's not the case, if you didn't find a correlation between people enjoyment in your scale and people willingness to play a game, that means your scale is basically bonkers. It's not useful. It's like there's something wrong with it. You didn't really measure game enjoyment. You probably measured something else. And this is a tricky part, like, and it's a big question. So, like, if you measure brand attitude, right, that should predict purchase intention, right? If you measure advertising enjoyment, that should also predict brand preference. So yeah, and you would see this. So that's like predictiveness. Okay. You would see that a lot. So, for instance, this is something we're discussing. Like, if we're measuring student satisfaction with remote learning, would that predict their willingness to stay with USD for next semester, right? So yeah, if you're satisfied with the experience so far, that should predict you staying, right? And so this get tricky because then we are going to talk about how you're measuring actually the other thing, the predicted variable, right? So you go back and apply all of these criteria we talked about, like relatedness, exhaustiveness, and etc. So those are things you should pay attention to when you're reading survey research and quantitative research. Assignment 4, by the way, although I already announced, is due next week. So it's not this week. I postponed it to be next week. But in the question, pay attention to those things I've discussed, okay? And there will be a short video. There's a short exercise in which you will take a quiz. So I'm going to post that later tonight. It should be fun. Like, you're going to take like a BuzzFeed quiz. It'll be fun. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, so if that's the case, I hope to see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.